Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar on expert tips for streamlining fleet inventory management. My name is Abigail Cassada, and I'm a demand generation specialist here at AMCS. I just wanted to go over some housekeeping items quickly with you all. Please keep your microphone muted during this webinar. We will have a Q&A at the end, so feel free to put your questions in the chat as you think of them and as they come in throughout the entire webinar, and John will read them off for us at the end. This session will be recorded and sent to everyone after the webinar, so you can rewatch it, send it to colleagues, whatever you like to do. We do have some customers on here, so thank you so much for joining. And for those of you who maybe aren't as familiar with AMCS, we provide practical solutions for the resources, waste, recycling, transportation, and utilities industries. So I'll go ahead and hand it off to John Davis, who's our head of delivery for fleet maintenance, and Maggie Laird, who is our fleet management consultant here at AMCS. I hope you all enjoy. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. This is John Davis, and thank you for joining us. As Abby said, I lead our professional services group. So those of you that have had our teams out to you for the training and the consulting and the deployments, that's the group that I've been in. So for 20 years now. So, and then Maggie Laird's going to join us and walk through this. And many of you have known her through the years for her expertise in inventory management. So Maggie.
Hi, everyone. This is Maggie, and thanks for being here. I am excited to share with you some things that I've learned over the years and see if we can't help you in streamlining your fleet inventory. I've been with AMCS for over 10 years, and I have about many more years past that, about 40 plus, and been to over 470 different customers. So bring a wealth of information and different ways to doing things. So thanks again for being here.
Right. We look forward to that today.
Challenges in fleet inventory management. Everybody has these challenges, and these are common issues. And if we don't identify them, we can't address them. So identifying these challenges is the first step towards effective solutions. Most common things we're going to list and discuss in a little more detail. But the one thing I wanted to really focus on is the word inventory. Inventory management is not just what's on the shelf, and it's things that we have to track for all the parts and supplies for non-stock and stock alone. And a lot of people say, oh, I don't have an inventory, I just have a parts room. Well, we're going to talk about that challenge as well. So we're going to start with your inventory spend and the cost of obsolescence. So the cost of supplies, of surplus inventory, with the form and fit and function, poor planning, not on your part necessarily, but on the part of the mechanics not letting you know what they need, right? And then tracking the inventory movements and storeroom layout and organization. So with that in mind, John, do you want to talk about the statistics first?
I will. So a big problem, I think everybody's seen this recently. I saw some numbers that were absolutely staggering recently when I was at the TMC in the spring meeting. Since 2020, parts and labor cost on the heavy duty fleets has inflated by 40% on average. That's just a staggering number, right? And the inventory is one of the things that always gets a look at from the very beginning, right? Why is all of this costing us so much? So I think with some of those numbers, it's a good time there's never a bad time, but it's a particularly good time to be looking at what are we doing with our inventory? Can we do a better job? And what tools do we have to work with that? So with that, and what we found is that at least 60%, that's a conservative number, but it's the number one thing you hear is like, why are my inventory costs so high? Why is it a big concern? What are we doing? And with good management, we typically see that we can knock out about 25% of the cost and then also improve our fill rates. It is getting better. We are seeing improvements and that's what our customers are telling us with the availability. It's still not easy in some specialty industries. It's still pretty bad getting parts. So there is a tendency a little bit to overstock in those areas, but with that, let's go through some of the things that what we can do. So Maggie?
So you want to click on the first one, John? Financial. This is a benefit of optimizing your inventory management because it can reduce the excess inventory and recovery costs. When I'm talking about recovery costs, you want to get your warranty claims costs back, which will reduce your dollars that you have, and you'll be able to start seeing where we've got that. So we want operation and budget management. There's an efficiency that we need to look at to streamline the processes. You know, it's amazing to me. I have not only warranty recovery here, but in streamlining the processes, we have several customers that I've been to over the years, not all dossier customers or AMCS customers, but all over the country and Canada. And one of the things that we see is that there's a lot of redundancy. And so streamlining those processes can improve accuracy. And if we use real time and we use complete computer systems instead of paper, what you're going to see is accuracy because people make mistakes. We all do. There's a strategic asset that turning inventory management is into a competitive advantagement. And so I just think that we need to take a look at how that will work. Go ahead, John. So if we start with the problem, excess and obsolete parts tie up your capital and take up space. If you don't have space to put the ones you need because we've got old parts, that's just not helping you in the shop at all. So we want to talk about that in more detail. So let's look at the solutions. First, we need to identify inactive parts and return or resell them. Some fleet systems say that you need to look at your obsolete and you need to do it not just one time, but do it over and over to see what you have. And so sell them back to the back to the vendor, or sell them through Amazon or eBay or whatever your agencies allow you to do. Even if you get 10 cents on a dollar, it's money back in, and you can turn right around and stock the things that you need. You need to identify any of the redundancies in the part catalog for consistent data. For instance, if I have multiple locations and in my organization, and one person puts that in as this is a 1515, and the next person puts that oil filter in as a 1515-oil filter, and the third person creates a part as filters, and then it says 1515, 51515. If they don't all call it the same thing, you don't see that you have inconsistent part numbering. And so then when mechanics go to issue them out, or your parts people, they don't get the right one. And so you really need to make sure that we have one part number that represents by manufacturer their number. There is a big statistic here, and that's 25% of inventory in most fleets is excess or obsolete. Well, when I'm talking excess, I'm talking you have a minimum and a maximum set. And if it is maximum of 6 and you have 12 on the shelf, you have an excess. If it's obsolete, it just means we haven't used them in a long period of time. So there's some things behind that with obsolete. Maybe they never got charged out, or maybe you returned them to a vendor and we didn't get it adjusted correctly in your fleet system. But those dollars are staggering. I was at one customer, a very large customer, and they tracked it for their obsolete, and they had over $750,000 of obsolete still showing in their inventory valuation in the system, not really on the shelf. So good way to start tracking and see what that is. Real-time inventory tracking, there's a problem. It's cumbersome, it's paper, and it leads to errors and inefficiencies. The solution is to go with mobile devices and have everything real time. Continuous stock level verifications is probably the biggest verification and help for you on the shop floor. If you wait and put everything in after the fact, then you don't know how many you really have on the shelf today and whether you need to reorder. It also allows you to accurately and efficiently make adjustments. So if I drop one, happens, well, think about your headlights. The mechanic gets it and his hands are slippery and it drops and it breaks. Well, it hasn't been issued out. They go get another one. My quantity on hand is now incorrect. So just real-time tracking says, do I have it? Do I need to reorder it? Etc. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope so. The other thing on here, right, is that we need to talk a little bit about why that tracking can reduce your errors. Well, that statistic of 30% says if I haven't issued it out, my inventory asset in the accounting world says I have more inventory than I really do. And if I issue it out, if they still think that you have it on hand and you don't, then my accounting side, whether we love them or not, the accounting side is going to come back and they're going to say, your information is incorrect. Some of you also bill back to your customers or other divisions. And when you do that, if you don't do it real time, you're not billing back and recouping those costs in a timely fashion. So your end of month spend may be completely off at that point.
And I think, Maggie, you had one of the things by the real time that we've seen, the real benefit is that the fact that the inventory is real time, up to date with what mechanics and technicians and parts department people issuing parts out or applying to work orders, and that instantly affects your inventory balances. Then we don't have to overstock to account for the old-fashioned paper flow that it takes us a week before we realize that we've used it, right? And then we don't have to do as many emergency orders. And I know you, we were discussing this a while back, and you had a number like what it costs to do invoices, right? We were doing a piece on some cities and governments, and it's pretty staggering how much each invoice costs to process through an organization, right?
So I thought I would just share this. It is a staggering dollar amount. And before I give you the number, I want you to think about how many people touch that order, touch that receipt, all the way to getting that paid. And so if your staff has to ask for it to be ordered, then you have to put the order into a system, and then you call the vendor and you get a supervisor's approval, and the ordering clerk and the receiving clerk and the fleet systems clerk and the accounts payable clerk. On an average in the United States today, it costs about $175 to process that invoice. Now, what if that invoice is for $20 part? And then I get another one later today, another from the same vendor, or maybe I get it tomorrow because I'm not buying stock, I'm buying as needed. How many invoices do you process from that very same vendor on a weekly basis? And how many times do you order that same part weekly? If you look at that and then take it times that $175, and that includes benefit hours too, their benefits, not just their base salary, that's a staggering dollar amount that if we just did it real time, we wouldn't have that kind of cost involved. So cost savings there.
And we've got some exciting new tools that some of you have probably discovered in fleet maintenance, and we're building some meaningful information around it. And that is how much time is lost for parts out of stock. In our classic series, we did have that stage and we knew that you were waiting for parts to come in, but now we actually count the minutes, days, or hours, whatever it takes, for why is the task blocked because we're out of stock or we're waiting on it or what have you. So I think armed with that information, you could sometimes say, well, we need to stock this. I know it's a $3,000 part, but we need to stock it because it's cost us, 60 some days of downtime cumulative over the year. And you can make that decision. So sometimes you may say, I need to increase the stock, and there's a reason, and you can justify that when you're going forward. And one other thing to add about this real-time inventory tracking, it's a big deal. And now with all of our mobile technology and the fact that everything is real time, we're we're in the midst of a deployment for a fairly sizable customer, very mature customers, and they're switching from another product. And it's so bad there. And they have about 6,000 part line items, right? So it's a very diverse operation. They're having to overstock on average 3 of every part because of how long the paperwork takes to flow through the system. Just think of the reduction in your minimum stock levels, because now you're looking at real time and you can order things in a better fashion. So I think where we're at with that real time is a big difference. Okay, Maggie?
One other comment on that, John, is the tracking of the inventory movement. If you're looking at how I can best look at this, I need to know how long it's taking from the time I order that part to the time that the vendors provide it to us. You know, we lived through the supply chain mess a couple of years ago. It is getting better, but there are some things that just take a very long time to get, and we need to, as a shop, look at what we are planning as our work so that the parts side can get those parts in advance for your preventive maintenance, maybe make up part kits if they need to, but that's tracking the movement and how long it's taking to get things in. That's why John's saying this company has, 3 extra ones, and you just have to have a plan and then follow that plan. Thanks, John. I'm going to go on to the KPIs here. Everybody that's in management seems to think that we need to have KPIs, which is just basically a visual, I can't say that word, visual, thank you, dashboard. And the things that we're looking for are excess stock, surplus stock, that fill rate, what are we out of as far as stock, what's potential because of those kinds of supply chain interruptions, and the mean time between failures. What I mean by mean time between failures is I put this part in, and on that same vehicle, how long does this part last? And I need to know that by manufacturer as well, because I may not be getting the best quality that I need. Now, this is one of the dashboards that they just put lots of things up on here, so they actually can see the maintenance costs showing. They can see open repair orders, that they can see open purchase requisitions and open purchase orders. So when you can visually see it, then your shop supervisors can see what's already on order so that they don't request it again and again and again. And you can, from the parts and inventory side, see which one of the vendors you need to contact and say, I need to know when is this going to get here? What's an ETA? I need to expedite this. If you don't see it visually and it's all on paper, folks, you don't have a way to keep up with that. And so I just think it's important that we have the KPIs, and they need to be able to be specific to the role you hold in your organization. If you're purchasing, you want to see those. If you are a shop supervisor, there's different ones you want to see. So your fleet maintenance systems need to show this. And our fleet maintenance system does have the ability for you to customize what you want on your dashboard. So I think it's important that we look at those.
I want to add one thing that Maggie said that was very interesting about the parts and the failures. You've got some really new tools that are available to you to be able to compare. So let's say that you have the same form, fit, and function for a given part, right? Maybe a light, and you have one manufacturer versus the other. Well, now we can have that part, and you can have it in there, and you'll know the manufacturer, and you'll know that you use the Grody versus the truck light, and you're going to know which one you used on that piece of equipment, and you can say, well, wow, this one cost me more money, but the failure rate is a lot lower. And just because that there's a part that has a particular failure rate, remember, somebody's got to change that part. So there's a labor element involved as well to go and change that, whatever that component is that failed. Even if you're getting the part for half as much, if you're changing it 3 times as much, now it's costing you more to use that cheaper part. And you can make the case, and you've got the numbers there. And we also we've always had this, but we've kind of built upon it a little bit, where we've got the equivalent parts available, as well as the vendor part numbers there for you as well to be able to see it. So when you're analyzing it across all of your different sites, you can say, okay, I know this part, I know what our average failure is on it. In addition to that, you now are able to always capture the component changes in the task on the work order. You'll notice that that's always there for you. Some of our users only used the 3-digit high level, and it was very hard to understand the failures in the classics if they had the others turned off, but you always have it there now. Okay, Maggie. This is a Maggie job. I recognize this. Sorry to step over you.
No, go ahead, John.
Yeah. So Maggie has led, I can't tell you how many of these storeroom type things. She's sort of the leader in our group over the last years, and she corrals our team together, and this is what we help customers accomplish. And I'll let Maggie go from here.
Thanks, John. We've had the opportunity to go in, and some storerooms look really good. Some parts rooms, and I'm going to call them two different things here, folks. Parts rooms, they start out nice and neat, and then over time, they just get out of hand. And we just go stick it somewhere, maybe on the floor, as you can see in the before. And then we help people define where things need to go. And that way the mechanic can easily find it, or the parts clerk can easily find it, instead of saying, I couldn't find it, so let's just order another one. So this particular customer, we were able to really, really help them. This is just one of the before and after screenshots, right? And this customer had the last 20 years worth of stuff, and I'll say it that way, stuffed on the shelves. And they knew that they had one somewhere, but they would continually not be able to find it. So they'd go out and they would buy another one. And then they'd say, oh, I bought the wrong one. I'll just stuff it over here. And one of these days we might need to use it. Now, I will say that a lot of storerooms or parts rooms in fleets today, the mechanics, if they had their way, I would have to have the Astrodome in Houston to put all the parts that I could possibly ever get. Well, they don't have that, so they stack it on top of each other. They have things that haven't moved in forever, and it's all jumbled. So one of the things that we did with this customer is we said, first of all, let's get all of the trash out of the storeroom, right? Let's just clean up the trash. If it's a broken box, pull it out. Let's put some better lighting in so you can even see what you have, was the second. And then let's organize the parts and have you put them on the shelves. And there's two different ways of doing that. Most of the time, we tell them to put them by the maintenance code, VMRS codes. So all your brake parts are together, that type of thing. Put your fast moving, your PM filters up where you can easily get to them. And then we also tell them that then they can say, oh, but we have construction equipment or we have heavy equipment. And then if you need to do that, go ahead and put those together. So they then identify it in their system as to where this part is by the bin location, so people know where to go look for that. And then on a weekly basis, go clean up the storeroom. Make it look good so that you can go find it. That's the whole idea. The sooner you can find it, the sooner you can repair, and I don't reorder what I don't need. Once they did that, we also said, did you pull out all the obsolete? Get rid of the stuff that doesn't fit anything, has no form or function. Get rid of the stuff that is broken. Get rid of the stuff that, you can only use belts if they're in good condition, and seals. So if they're dry rotted, you don't need them anymore. They shouldn't be in the system that way. They shouldn't be in your storeroom. So we just make a list of do what first, second, third, fourth, have them make the before and after picture for us so that we can see how well that worked. And what they find is the value of that inventory is reduced considerably. then mark the things that are surplus so that you can say, can I sell it back, or do I think I'll use it within, I don't know, maybe 6 months. Sometimes you'll have surplus on the shelf because you're in an area of the country that says, oh, I have seasonal things I need to have. Well, your system needs to also be able to tell you if you have different needs in min-max because of seasonal. And we do. And so we put all those pieces together with start here. What do you do first? What do you do second? And this is the after. So this took them probably 3 months to get it all cleaned up from one step to what you finally see. And now they're seeing just a return on their mechanic and part people time to get the parts and put them on the shelves so that they can see them. It was great. So I just wanted to share the storeroom layout and organization and some ideas about what you might be able to do with this. By the way, I did go back and talk with this customer, and they're still following this. They do it on a routine basis, sort of like setting up a PM for their storeroom. You know, we set up PMs for vehicles. Well, they set up a PM that says weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually. And they've done a great job in maintaining what it should look like and maintaining that benefit of how that works on the shop floor for them.
So where do we start? Well, the first place to start would be the obsolete. Let's look at the obsolete report. So we've got had this report for close to 40 years, right? But we've really optimized it and made it quicker and right there at your fingertips when you open it. So it's obsolete parts card, right? And you can set it defaults to 90 days, but you can set it to whatever you want. So that may be not reasonable for you. You may say, well, let me look at 2 years or something of that nature. You can set anything you want. You can save it. You can keep it the way you want. And that's how we identify to start with what's going on. And then I'm going to let Maggie take it from here. Is once we identify, where do we go?
I was working with a customer not too long ago, and they were making a migration from one system to another. And we asked them to run an obsolete report. And they said, we want to go back and look at everything that's in the system that we have not ordered, issued, returned to stock. We haven't received anything. And we haven't added as a new part in the last 24 months. They had 80,000 part numbers as a result. 80,000, not only just stock parts, but non-stock parts. And so they pulled all that and said, now we need to sell these back for obsolescence or credit. And they agreed that 10 cents on a dollar would be a lot better than if we just left it sitting on the shelf where we had no room to put anything. And then they stacked it on the floor, and we can go back to the previous slide and show you that again. But they didn't need to do that. So sell it back. Talk to your vendors. If this is a new vendor that you're going to work with, ask them about their sellback, their buyback program, so that you have that in place, right? After you've done obsolete, then run your parts over maximum. Now, this is only going to touch stock parts, and that's okay. What you want to know is, do I have my max set correctly, and do I have too much on the shelf? Sometimes you just want to look at just-in-time inventory. Why am I stocking 24 of these? Oh, because we got a good price on them. Or, oh, you know, they had it's end of the year. That's another one that I always find, especially in municipalities and government agencies. If I don't use my budget money up for inventory and parts, they won't give me as much next year. So let me just buy. And you can see in the last month of their buying cycle, how many dollars of inventory goes up. Well, they didn't need it, but they were afraid they would lose the dollars. We need to rethink how that works. Return the surplus for credit, same type of thing. Set your stocking levels based on historical usage. Our system has lots of different reports that you can look at on part usage. Every system should do that. And you need to run this to look at not only the usage, but on what vehicles you used it on. If you're not using anymore, or you don't have that asset any longer, then I don't need to keep those parts if it only fits that asset, that form, fit, and function that John was referring to.
And one
So
of the
run your part usage history report. I'm sorry, John. Go ahead.
I didn't mean to step on you there, but one of the things is that in that obsolete parts, we've added some information. So take a look at it. It will show you it'll show you the piece of equipment was last used on. You can see it'll also show you if that piece of equipment is inactive. So you can quickly identify, oh, well, the last time we used it was a year and a half ago, but it's on a piece of equipment we don't have anymore, and we don't have any more of that type of equipment. So go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, that's great information. Thanks for sharing. So review the part for form, fit, and function. And that's what John and I were just talking about. Organize your storeroom, and then start doing cycle inventories. What I mean by that is don't just do it once a year. You can go in and do it by breaks, 013, or you can say, I'm going to just do this row or this aisle. And if you've got a mobile device, you can go in, you see it at the parts stores now, you see it at the grocery stores. They don't wait and shut down the inventory room and do a closed inventory. They just go out and take it. Today, I'm going to do these 10 parts, and tomorrow I'm going to do these 10 parts. And that makes it easier on everyone to get accurate and keep accurate counts. So cycle inventories is really a nice tool, and I think everyone should start using it. Then I go to inventory planning. This is a way for you to project, let's say the preventive maintenance program, what PMs are going to be or what are projected to be done in the next 2 weeks. Then if the inventory group or the parts groups looks at that and says, well, if I've got 12 of these type vehicles coming in and I need these standard job repairs, right, and these are the parts for them, then I want to go in and I want to say, this is what I'm going to need in the next week or 2 weeks. Then I can look at that and say, how often can my vendor supply that? Do I need to reset my stock levels to accommodate that? So really looking at inventory planning is a way in which you can have the right parts in the right quantities on the shelf for when your people need them. That works for anything that you can pre-plan. Obviously, we have to react a little bit when we have unscheduled repairs, but most of you have a majority of the things you do are scheduled. You know it's coming in, so schedule your inventory in at the same time. The process for ordering and receiving and issuing, each and every one of you needs to rethink or at least observe what that process is. If we are reacting and every time we need to buy a part, we go out and we order one and receive one, and then we issue it to that work order task. And then, oh, I've got another one 2 hours from now, and I order it and I receive it and issue it. It takes a lot of time. So setting your min-max so that you can order based on min-max is a good way to do. Now, here's a suggestion of one of the things that we did at a major city. We went in and we first went to our top 10 vendors. Maybe look at 6, maybe look at 10, but we went with 10 and we called them and said, what day do you reorder from your distributor? And they said, okay, in this case, they order on Wednesday. Well, I had that city went in and they said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to place our stock order on Tuesday. So if they don't have it, they can get it on Wednesday and I'll get those parts by Thursday or Friday at the latest. If we waited and placed that order for restock on Thursday, they're not going to reorder till next Wednesday. So looking at how they can order and work with the vendor to get their orders in the day before the vendor has to reorder, you'll get your parts in a more timely fashion. The second thing they did was they did their reorder min-max. Make sure that report for reordering not only tells you the vendor, but tells you the current on order so you don't duplicate orders. If I already have it on order for 12, I don't want to turn around and place another order. So again, relying on the information, the real-time information in your system is better. And then review it daily. What's on order? Be sure to expedite and follow up on those. Just because somebody created an order a week ago Tuesday and hasn't been received, you need to go in and expedite those. So those are some ideas about ordering and receiving and issuing. And then finally, go ahead, John.
Okay, something came up that I want to make sure. Maggie had a great point here, and that was about your PM planning. And I want, for those of you that are on the newest version of fleet maintenance, in the PM details report, and that screen, we now project, so you don't have to go run a separate report. We now project the due date for that PM. So instead of having to go run a separate report for the projected PMs and say, here's what we're going to do, it's in the base report for you now. And so with the way that it works is it calculates the utilization of that piece of equipment over the last 12 months. So miles, hours, kilometers, whatever you're measuring. Of course, days, years are easy, but it will give you that. So I'm going to have 25 APMs due, in this next month or whatever the case might be. So take a look at that when you get a chance and look at those dates. And if you're new to the system, obviously the first month or two, it takes a little while to build that data on the utilization. But as the longer you're on it, as soon as you've been on it a year, it's very accurate as far as the projected date, as long as the utilization stays, about the same. So anyway.
That's a good point. Checks and balances with accounting. This is the one where fleet doesn't like accounting, but they have to live with accounting, have to live with GLs and things like that, which are just general ledger accounts, but it does affect your monthly spend and it does all sorts of things. Now, in an accounting world, there is a check and balance that says, if you don't want the same person or the same role to be able to create a part, create a vendor, create a work order, receive, and issue. There is no check and balance on that at all. And so when you're looking at this in your fleet, do you have someone who would place the orders and issue out to the work orders, but not receive them? Do you have someone that can create the work orders, but if you leave it open to everybody and then you throw in, they can also adjust the quantity, you're putting them at risk and you have no check and balance whatsoever. So if you are working through this, maybe you have enough staff that you could have one or two people with specifics. If not, you really need to have a plan of how you're going to monitor that so that that person isn't put in a crunch that says, I didn't do that, or I don't know why my inventory's off. I'll just go adjust it. You need to have someone else do the adjustments, folks. That's the bottom line. If you're letting them do all the other things for good accounting balances and making sure that people are doing what's supposed to be and that the system is correct, you really need to make sure that the adjustment side is only done by a supervisor or above that has that ability to do that. It really shouldn't be that same parts person down on the shop floor. And that way you're just keeping everything above board and it makes it cleaner all the way through. John, comments on that at all? Okay, we'll go to the next one.
I can't add anything to that. You got it all.
Okay.
So we're getting close to the end. So I'll say here, if you've got any questions, let's go ahead and get those in there. We do have a few, but we have one more thing to cover and then we'll go through any questions you have. So if you've got anything, if you put it in the questions there, then we can go through those and give you some answers. So Maggie, here you go.
The purchase orders and cost management. The whole idea of having a process defined so that you can follow it is to minimize the duplication. You want to make sure that we're not putting the same order in over and over in error. We don't need to do that. And so we want to verify the quoted prices versus the invoiced amount. It amazed me over all these years that I've been doing this, that I walk into a shop and parts are being delivered, and they'll just walk up to anyone and say, here's a box of parts, will you sign for the delivery ticket? And they walk away. They sign it and they walk away. Well, whoever signed it without even looking to see if the parts are what you ordered and the quantity and looking at that invoice for price verification, you just made a signature that says this company is now liable for that payment, whether you got what you ordered or not. And did they give me the right price? It's a lot easier to fix it on the front end, folks, than it is to go back and have to get another invoice or a credit memo. A lot of times, if you get that credit memo, you don't get the money in your maintenance budget back. It went to the general budget. And so now you order the right thing and you have to get those in. You're also needing to make sure that you got the right parts for what you ordered. If you ordered 4 and they delivered 6, now you're paying for something you didn't order. If you ordered 4 and they delivered 2, hey guys, I get it. They're your buddies. They'll bring them to me this afternoon, no problem. But my inventory count, when I do my receipt, I don't want to say I received 4. I didn't. I only received 2. So make sure if that's the case that you show that you received 2, and that when they bring the other 2, then you do a second receipt for the other 2. So verify your quotes, verify the invoiced amounts, verify your parts. That's all part of the purchase order and cost management. Track your orders and receipts real time. Again, we want to know what the mean time between failure is, but we also want to know how long it's taking to get the parts. Do I need to have a second or third vendor store that's available that I can get parts from if these are on back order somewhere? I need to know if it's a national back order and I can't get them anywhere. Maybe one of my other sites has them that I can transfer. That all comes into, I don't want to just write another purchase order, right? Then allocate the purchase costs against specific GLs. You know, you have a budget line item. It's called a general ledger in the accounting world, but you have a budget line item and you're not supposed to exceed it. And in a lot of trucking companies, we're asked to look at that on a daily basis, or at least report it on a weekly and monthly basis. And so you need a system that will allocate those costs against the GL accounts. And so looking at it from that standpoint, here's another one of the dashboards that we have in fleet maintenance that just lets me know all my open purchase orders and receipts. And if I open that, it'll tell me the dollar amount. And then I can look at the cost down at the bottom. I can get a graphic. And so great reports that you can put up and have real-time KPIs specifically for purchase orders and cost management. Also, some of you are in a position that you can only, a parts person can request or order parts up to, let's say, $2,500. If that order goes over that, some other supervisor has to approve that order. And that's called a table of authority for spend. And you can implement that, and that supervisor can approve that additional cost, but it helps you with tracking all of your spends for cost management. So the scenario here is managing your fleet repair parts stocks and non-stock. Don't just do purchase orders for restock. You need to do this every time you order parts so that you know how many times I'm buying that non-stock part and should I be stocking it? Or how many times am I buying the stock and we don't ever use it? It just sits on the shelf and it goes obsolete. Manage your external repair quotes. You should put a purchase order in for that so you know how much you told them that you're willing to pay for the job that they've quoted. And then when you get the invoice, if they charge you more, now you can negotiate with them and say, I'm not paying the difference. This is the quote you have. This is what I accepted. So make sure you're managing those as well. And the bottom is doing purchase orders, cost management, and inventory management is going to enhance the accuracy in your inventory valuation. There are 3 ways that people do valuation, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but I will tell you that one is first in, first out, called FIFO. One is last in, last out, which is the last one in is the first price out that you're going to get. And then they have one called average. A lot of people use all three of those. But the one disadvantage to average that I want to just throw out there is if you don't turn that inventory over and get it back to zero, your average cost is going to be all over the place because you never use the ones you bought on sale 4 years ago. You just keep buying them, and so it's averaging out, and it's not the best way to do that, and most accounting systems frown on average. So those are just some things to keep in mind when you're looking at your cost management and overall inventory. So challenges that you might see, some of you might have the same ones, some may have others. I think, John, I'm done with mine unless there are questions specifically.
We do have a couple, so let me get through those so that we have time. So our first question. Okay, so one of the questions was, what report do we pull to see what parts are needed for the upcoming PMs? So if you have, if you've already created your checklist, you may have it there. The other place would be if you're on the latest version on fleet maintenance. If you go to the asset, by default, it's going to show you all the parts that have been used for that. You can also pre-assign parts to the assets from within that parts tab on that asset. So whichever you might have, you can go from there to be able to see. So I would suspect that would be, you could look at, here's what we've been using on this particular piece of equipment. Also, while you're working within there, in the same kind of vein, right? When you're working on a piece of equipment, and let's say you're doing PM, it's going to filter to the parts that asset has used or that VMRS is associated with.
That's that feature that we have is incredible, because when I go to issue a part, it'll let me look at all parts available or parts that vehicle has used previously. So if I set it up and I say these are the PM parts because I've put it to the maintenance code PMS, then I can see all the ones that I have used, and those are the ones that I want to make sure I have when I'm doing my scheduling.
Okay, let me see. Got a couple more here I just need to look through. So I think I can handle this in which way, and Maggie and I can bounce through and talk through it. So Maggie touched on it briefly, and it was about inventory counting. In a lot of systems, even our classic system was sort of this way. You almost had to shut down the storeroom as a point in time, right? To get a true and accurate inventory. No longer, right? We really truly are real time. So as long as there's the discipline of people
John, we lost your audio.
charging out the parts, and we've made it so easy now that we support all of the packaging, that you really don't have to go through all that time consumption of printing a label and putting it on the part and all that. You can just have it right there on the part to start with, and then it makes it very easy for people to scan out a part when they're using it. Well, the moment that is scanned out, if the discipline is when you take it from the shelf, you scan it out, whether that be a mechanic or a technician, a parts room manager, clerk, whatever, then if somebody comes right behind that, so say I charge the part out and Maggie comes right behind me and she's going to do a cycle count, it's real time. It knows that I have used that part. It also knows, say for instance, well, I went and got that relay and I put it on, it didn't fix the problem it was supposed to, but it didn't. And I take it and I put that part off the work order back into inventory. It will then update that as well, right? So any transaction that you make, same thing for receiving. right? So if you receive in the parts, you've done your receipt, maybe you had to receive it in off a packing slip, you didn't have the invoice yet, but just the fact of receiving it, you're not closing out the receipt yet because you don't really have all of the details yet, like the invoice number and all that. But it will know that, yes, this is my real time. So just think about how much time that can save, because now when there is a lull in activity in the storeroom, people can be doing the cycle counts and you don't have to shut things down, spend a whole weekend doing it, or stay late in the evenings. And it just becomes, a real time thing. I know people do it different ways. One of the Maggie's suggestion was by
I lost you again, John.
VMRS, right? So we're gonna do all our breaks. And, maybe your solution is you count the entire storeroom once you get everything counted maybe 3 times a year, 4 times a year, whatever your rule is. And I don't know, Maggie, if you've got some practical knowledge on what you think is a good cycle count, but that was part of the question. What's a good time? How often? What's the frequency of our counts?
I like cycle counts that aren't necessarily set up on a time. I like to do them by aisle and row and go in and say, I'm going to do this one this week and I'm going to do that one. I think weekly, if you're going to do it, true cycle counts, you should do weekly cycle counts so that by the end of the year, you've done 52 cycle counts. You've taken your total of, let's say you have 5,200 parts, you're only doing 100 parts a week. And so it breaks it down into realistic chunks of time. Some people do it, I'm going to do all the breaks and do it by VMRS code, but however you choose to cycle count, the idea is I want to make sure I count it at least one time a year. I just don't have to do it as a wall to wall at the end of the year. What I do see is if they're not doing weekly, then they're saying, okay, we want to do a minimum of quarterly. We want to test every part on a quarterly basis. And they're just trying to catch anything that fell through the cracks before they get to the end of the year and have to make an adjustment with the accounting group, because at the end of the year, they're tracking the inventory valuation. Yours is based on what's true and in the shop. So now you have to ask them to make a major hit. It's easier to take an adjustment hit throughout the year than at the end of the year. And then that always, puts red flags out there for everybody. So I recommend weekly, if not at least quarterly, and do them random. Don't just do up and down every aisle, because at that point, everybody can figure it out. John, do I have time to share one story?
I think we have like 2 more minutes unless Abby cuts me off, but I do think we're okay.
Okay, so I was at a customer that has multiple locations, and we made the mistake with this customer of saying, we're going to come in and do your inventory on Tuesday of next week. Well, they ran the report out of their system. They then transferred all the things that were not the same. Like if they had 6 and they only have 4 on the shelf, they transfer them to another of the sites in the system, not in reality, but in the system. And then if they were short, they'd call the other site and say, I need to borrow 2 of these for the day. Don't tell them you're coming in. Make it truly random and unannounced, and you'll get better information, folks. That's my story.
Okay, I think you were cutting out a little bit there, Maggie, at least on my side. So I'm thinking maybe they're trying to tell us that we're getting ready to pull this off stage here. So yep. With that, I want to thank everybody. We've got some, you can learn more here on the screen. We've got a couple. So the left side, you can learn more about our software. And on the right, it'll take you through a self-guided tour. So for those that may be on one, our classic series, our DOSI 6 Series 5, maybe that, or some other solution out there, we certainly invite you to come and take a demo of our newest series. It's been out there live now for just shy of 4 years. So we're really rolling through that, adding customers every single week to that. And I think you'll really like some of the new features if you're not already on that version. So with that, we certainly appreciate your time today, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar series. Abby?
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Maggie and John. Thanks, everyone, for listening and for all your questions. Like I said, the recording will be sent out this week, so thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Take care, everyone.